Council after Wausau had the largest political demonstration in generations this summer. Nearly 2,000 people showed up to peacefully demonstrate and affirm that Black Lives Matter. We heard you and we wanted to be responsive but not reactive. So for the last several months, we have been meeting as a task force to learn about and assess Wausau's policing policies and practices. We're ready to hear from you about your experiences, good, bad, and different, and use these insights to provide community-led public safety recommendations to the public, Wausau City Council, and the Wausau Police Department about how to best protect human health, safety, and general welfare of Wausau residents and visitors who come into contact with law enforcement. Now, we do have some members of the task force present here this afternoon. Shout out to Alder Pat Peckham and County Board Supervisor and Jack of all trades and Chair of our task force, John Robinson. Thank you. And everyone else will have access to your comments afterwards. Know that anything you share here, there won't be any retaliation for sharing your thoughts and experiences, but we really do want to learn and hear from what you have to say. So thank you for engaging with your community as we strive for excellence together.
Thank you, Mayor Rosenberg. So my name is Ruth Cronji. I am the moderator for today, and I hope everybody can hear me. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can? Perfect. Great. So I do have just a few housekeeping chores to do before we can get started on the questions. And the first thing that I want to tell you is that this is a public meeting and we are recording it so that we can accurately capture what you will be saying. If you do not feel comfortable with others hearing what you have to say, or if you would like to protect your identity, or if you have additional things you want to say anonymously, please know that we want to hear your voice and there are other ways to participate. As Mayor Rosenberg mentioned, you can share a voicemail message, a voice message, an email, a letter, a video, or an audio, or fill out an online form, and she gave you the URL for that purpose. The online form is the most confidential way to share information and will not be linked to your identity. For more information, please visit wipps.org/WPD, which is also posted in the chat section of Zoom, where you will find more information about more ways to participate. If you are having technical issues, we do have a couple tech people on standby to assist. Please use the chat function and send your message to WIPS staff for further assistance if you're running into problems with your technology. Just a couple of etiquette notes. For our meeting, you may choose to keep your camera on or off, but we ask that you keep your microphone on mute at all times until and then we've got such a small group, I might actually just let everybody take their microphones off mute, and we might just have a conversation amongst ourselves. But if we get more people joining us, we may have to do it one at a time. And so at that point, if I say that will be happening, I'll just ask you to mute your mics until it's time for you to talk. So just a few other ground rules. Please avoid background distractions, and I'm going to try to do so as well, although my dog is here today. And again, only one person speak at a time. If we do have to go to a one person at a time kind of format, I'll determine the speaking order, and you'll be asked to stay on mute until I call on you. Please do not interrupt when someone is speaking. Please keep your remarks to a few minutes if we end up getting larger numbers of people. Otherwise, with this smaller group, I think you can probably speak for as long as you have something to say. I may ask you to abbreviate your thoughts just to make sure that everybody is getting a chance to have their voice heard. And of course, I'll remind you that voice message, email, letter, online feedback are all additional ways that you can continue to augment what you have to say here today. There are going to be very likely different opinions and different points of view expressed today, so please be respectful of others and their viewpoints. Please speak about your own experience or things you have witnessed, not about stories you have heard from others. So if we can keep your comments mostly directed toward what you personally have seen going on or experienced, that would be great. Some of the people in this conversation may choose to share stories that are personal and emotional. You might feel anger or sadness or joy or so on. Emotions are welcome, and we ask that you have patience with one another as we share these feelings. We do ask you to refrain from personal attacks Hate speech will not be tolerated, and anyone who engages in hate speech or personal attacks will be asked kindly to stop making such remarks. If they do not stop, they will be asked to leave the space or be removed. So, by staying in this space, you are acknowledging and accepting these ground rules. If you choose not to abide by these ground rules, we invite you to leave this space so others can participate safely. If you choose to leave, you will have the opportunity to share your views through one of the other methods, including, as we've said, voice message, email, written letter, audio, video, or feedback form. And again, please check out the website www.wipps.org/WPD, which is posted in the chat sections for more information about how to share your views. So this afternoon, we have 6 questions that we'd like you to respond to. And so as long as we're staying with a pretty small number of people, I am going to just open it up and let you respond to any one of these 6 questions, or all of them, which would be great. If everybody responded to all of them, it would be fantastic. Our tech crew, I'm pretty confident, would be posting the 6 questions in the chat box in a second here. But before we begin, I will read them to you, and once we get them posted in the chat, everyone can read them along with me. So I'm looking if the staff is posting the questions. I'm just gonna, there we go, there are the questions. So I'm just gonna read them together. 1, when you think of safety in the city of Wausau, what are the most urgent priorities in your opinion and why? 2, what are current strengths of the Wausau Police Department, if any? 3, what concerns do you have about the Wausau Police Department, if any? 4, please describe specific experiences or interactions, if any, you have personally had with Wausau law enforcement. And what we're looking for there are positive stories, negative stories, or both. 5, if there's anything you would like the Wausau Police Department to change in the way it conducts law enforcement, what is it and why are those changes important to you? And then 6, is there any further information about policing you would like to share with or receive from the city of Wausau? So it is time for you folks to share, and there are still only a couple of folks, so I'm going to say let's open it up. And so if PJ, you can turn on everybody's mics, and is it Chandra and Doug who are here? Yes. Chandra and Doug, if either one of you would like to get started answering any one of those questions or all of them. Doug, could we start with you, possibly?
Sure, you put me on the spot. Well, I skipped to one specific. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Yep, we absolutely can hear you.
I have participated in a ride-along in the past, and I was very impressed with the general organization of the officer and his training. And so I think in general, I think we have a good department. Speaking more broadly to what I've seen issues in other communities where maybe situations are mishandled and deadly force is used too early, or it's questioned as to whether it should be used. I think a general conditioning, I hope I'm on the right topic here, but the general conditioning and training is potentially helpful. And you see some out of shape police officers and I'm not pointing out any in Wausau, but I think we need to look at physical fitness as probably the number one means to prevent having to escalate to other issues. Or more lethal force. So it's kind of maybe a tangent on just a specific use of force issue. But I think if we're in selecting people who can manage those physical activities like we do with fire departments, you need to be physically fit to do this job. And I think a lot of recent, it's been my observation that we have people who aren't in shape, and I don't know what we can do to fix that. But yeah, I'll leave it at that. That's just a random observation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Doug, do you feel comfortable if I circle back and ask you, when you were on the ride along, you said you were generally impressed by what you witnessed with the Wausau Police Department. Can you talk a little bit more about that? What did you see that was impressive? What was it about what you saw that was impressive to you?
Well, we had a couple of, I call them nuisance calls, maybe some neighborhood kids in a playground, and a couple of things that were I'd consider nuisance, and the officer was very had a good way of communicating with the residents that he was in contact with. Didn't make anyone feel like he was there to pound lumps on somebody's head. He was there to understand what their issue was. And I think maybe his approach was he's just trying to find a solution without having to pull the rank card of, hey, I'm a cop, you need to do this. We had where there was a couple of spin outs where a person was in this happened on a pretty snowy day. It was last year. He helped the guy out of the ditch, and away he went. He probably could have given the individual a ticket for that, but he felt it was much better to just interact with the person, help him out of his little jam, and send him on his way. So I got the feeling that he was the kind of person that you could talk to. And I think some of the bad press that the police get, that they're the bad guys when they roll up on the scene, I think that went a long way to help me understand that at least my interaction there was very positive, that we're not looking to be the bad guys.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Doug, for that information. That's useful. That's useful elaboration. Chandra, have you had experiences with Wausau law enforcement that
Yes.
you could talk about?
Well, a couple of capacities. I could talk about 10, 12 years ago and how it's changed from then. I've worked in nonprofit. I currently work for North Central Community Action Program. So we have dealt with officers when it comes to some of our clients, our tenants, checking in on them. Some have substance abuse, some have mental health histories. And I think what I've seen a lot of is there is a lot of training on mental health response and involving the CART team and partnering with North Central Healthcare and being proactive. But on the other side of that, having that law enforcement liaison officer or former officer, Bob Wilcox, having him as a liaison, he did the job for, maybe almost 30 years, brings that experience, but then also that training. And so you're training the contacts you have, people with mental health issues, and how to respond to that proactively, whereas before, would things escalate, and matching, how you respond to that. But also the other side is the ability for law enforcement to reach out when they're not okay mentally. That was a stigma, and now it's not so much of a stigma, and being able to recognize that.
So Chandra, do you mean when a law enforcement officer themselves needs mental health support?
Correct.
Is that what you're talking? Okay.
Correct.
Okay. All right. And so are you saying that you feel that is now that is happening the way it should be happening? Am I understanding you?
I've seen a progressive change or a progressive difference. Not that one was, good, bad, or otherwise, but just a evolution of things. We've got a more diverse police force, and continuing to work on making it diverse, but also adding that not only physical things, but also, community response. So the mental health needs and that protection of property and person.
Right. Okay. And are these insights that you're sharing with us today the result of specific personal experiences or interactions you've had, or an opportunity you've had to directly observe?
Yes.
Okay. Good. Good. That's great. So I'm just going to ask Paula Schultz, are you a citizen who has joined us to share your views about Wausau law enforcement? Oops. Did Paula leave? I can barely hear you. Can you try turning up your volume? Or TJ, can you help Paula? Yeah, I still can't hear you super well, Paula.
Okay.
Hi, Paula, but I can see you.
Hi.
Oh, now I can hear you. That's
I'm trying to
perfect.
jump
Okay.
on a different computer. Sometimes my main computer doesn't work quite as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I jumped on late. I apologize. I was working or am working, and so just joined and just caught the tail end of Sandra's communication.
Okay.
So, did you ask me to share my perspective or?
Well, yeah, actually, can you see the chat? And TJ, could you just, the chat seems to have rolled up. So could you paste the questions again into the chat, TJ, so that we can see them again? But what we're doing here is we've got about 5 or 6 questions that we're asking citizens to respond. The WPPS staff or WIP staff just posted them. So if you could respond to any or all of these, when you think of safety, what are in the city of Wausau, what are the most urgent priorities in your opinion and why? What are current strengths of the Wausau Police Department, if any? What concerns do you have about them, if any? Please describe experiences or interactions. So any of those 5 or 6 questions, we'd love to hear your response. And everybody, we have such a small group here today that everybody's open mic at the moment and everybody can just participate in a discussion.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Just kind of thinking on a level of safety, one of the concerns that I have had, and I'm not even sure if it really is police concern. So if it's not, and I'm rabbit trailing, just stop me and I'll quit talking about that. But I use Marathon Park as a walking place for my dogs frequently, and the crosswalks in that community are just generally not safe. And so I get across there, of course, but I don't feel safe when I get across there. And I oftentimes worry about kids trying to cross, because maybe they're not going to be as careful as an adult would be, people not slowing down. I did leave a couple messages, I think, with the some department within City Hall. Twice I left messages and I never did get a response from anybody. And both times that I called, it was prompted by my frustration of crossing and people not slowing down for me or stopping for me like they should. So that's maybe not the police thing in general, but it's just something that's truly been a concern of mine.
Sure, Paula, so can I just ask a couple of follow-up questions on that so we're sure we're understanding you? So are you mostly concerned with traffic safety? It's not like you're concerned about other kinds of being attacked or anything. So it's a traffic safety concern that you're trying to express here?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a traffic thing, yeah, for sure. I mean, I
Okay.
open-mindedly, I've thought, maybe we could set up a trial or something where I could be the dummy or whatever crossing that road and have somebody, watch to see what is truly happening because, well, maybe not with this cold snap, but almost daily I cross to go into that park and it's troublesome to me.
Sure. And so Paula, do you see law enforcement as having a role in resolving that or improving the situation? And if so, what is the role you see law enforcement as having?
Yeah. Well, potentially the role of monitoring that area, maybe education. I thought, some way maybe we could do some kind of public education on, you truly have to stop when somebody has already entered that crosswalk. Oftentimes, from my perspective, what I'm seeing is the driver assumes that I need to stop or I need to back up and go to the curb. And truly, I believe the law states that if I'm in that crosswalk already, the vehicles need to stop. And rarely does it happen. When it does, I'm, ecstatic about it and thanking the people that are stopping for me. So maybe just some more education in the safety of crosswalks and you know, I
Okay,
don't know how we could get that public message out, but I think it's an important one, especially in a school district.
sure, absolutely. So Patrick, did you have something that you wanted to say about this?
You're on mute.
I can't hear Patrick. TJ, can you unmute Patrick?
Yeah, his phone was muted because it was giving feedback, but now I don't know how to.
So Patrick, can you try one more time and just still can't hear Patrick. Okay, I think maybe this is going to work. I think your phone is still on mute, but maybe TJ can fix that.
Yep. Patrick, you just muted your phone, so if you want to enter the same numbers again. There you go.
Sorry, can't hear you, Patrick. Yeah. So Patrick, we're not having any luck hearing you. Would you feel comfortable, Patrick, typing your comment in the chat? If
You're unmuted now, Patrick, I think.
oh, maybe try now, Patrick.
Now it works?
Yes, perfect. Okay, Patrick, you have something to say about this.
Okay, I'm getting a little echo here, but we'll see what.
Maybe if you muted your iPad right now.
Okay, I muted the computer. So for Ms. Schultz, I would recommend for that concern, you could bring it to the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee that I happen to chair. And if you would explain your concern, if you're talking about the intersection, I think you're talking about it's something that we've discussed before. The solution is probably an overpass on Stewart at the cost of large amounts of money. But we would be happy to discuss it again, and we're actually going to have a meeting in about 10 days. So if you could, you can go to City Hall, send me an email directly, or send it to the city clerk or the mayor, and they will relay it to me, and I can get it on the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee agenda.
Yeah, that
Take
would
care of that.
Thank you. And maybe potentially even just flashing lights. I've wondered if we could ever just do the flashing lights. I mean,
Very good.
maybe grab attention more. I'm not sure.
Very good. Feel
Thank
free
you.
to make any suggestions that you think would work.
Okay. And then, did you want me to carry on with thoughts and conversation? Okay. As far as some great strengths, the traffic thing that I was just talking about is my personal life. But for my work role, I work with the Marathon County Restorative Justice Program, and some of the liaison officers help me with this program where we have conversations with youth that happen to be referred into our program. And I can't say enough about how wonderful they, step into that role and assist youth. And I'm just thankful for the support that they're able to give. We don't have, a single negative thing to say about it. Everybody steps up to the plate and offers support. Even if it's something that I can't quite navigate or figure out, I always felt that I get a great deal of support from our police department.
Okay, that's useful information. Thanks for sharing that. Do you feel comfortable describing a little bit what that support looks like and why you feel it's as effective as it is?
Sure. I think one of the things that I like the most is that it opens up that comfortable level for kids to be able to talk to the officers. I haven't had interactions with officers prior to going through our program. They might be hesitant to, reach out or feel comfortable in even speaking with an officer. And this gives them a great opportunity to see that, they're like us. They're they're there to help. It's not always just a punitive enforcement role. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, well, thank you. That's useful information. Sorry, my dog is seeing somebody going by. I think you can probably hear him in the background. So can I ask Chandra, Doug, and and Paula, can you talk a little bit about why it was important? This isn't on the question, so I'm going off script and I'm asking a separate question. Why was it important to you to attend today's session? You know, why are you, it's great you're here. We're very pleased to see you here. Can you talk a little bit about what it is that made you want to take the time to join us today? So Chandra, could I get you to start with that question? If you're
Sure.
comfortable answering it.
I think it's good to share some of the positive feedback and the accomplishments that our local law enforcement has made, especially when everything is so publicly, you know, if there's issues with law enforcement and usually negative, it's in the public, it's in the news, it's, you know, all around us. So shedding light on some of the positive, proactive things that law enforcement's doing in our community goes a long way. You know, I try to teach my children that, you know, law enforcement is your friend. And there's some cross-cultural issues. My children are biracial, so there is a stigma on one half of the family that is anti-law enforcement. So trying to navigate with my own children and our beliefs on, you know, law enforcement being able to help, that is a personal challenge I have with my family. So I like to highlight the positive strengths anytime that I can.
Okay, thanks, Chandra. That's very useful information. Doug, can you talk about why you opted to join us today and what's important about this conversation from your perspective?
I apologize. I wasn't prepared to speak today. I guess I thought I was just going to watch others hash things out. So
You don't have to answer if you don't feel like it, Doug.
Oh, that's
But if
okay.
you do have an answer for us, we'd love to hear it.
Well, I've always been interested in city government, and I have a military background, so security and policing are of interest to me. And I see a lot of good things. I think we have a lot more good things in our Wausau police community than maybe some other surrounding towns have experienced in recent history. So I guess as a citizen, I'm interested in helping out whenever I can.
Okay, thanks, Doug. That's useful. Paula, can you talk about why you opted to join us today?
Okay. Yeah, I just stumbled across an email I think that I received, and I thought I just wanted to participate. I wanted to hear what other people had to say. And again, I too didn't know that we were going to have open discussion, but I think this is great. Kind of going off what Chandra said, that I think, especially in these pandemic days, there's so much negativity, and I think we need to celebrate what we do have. And we, in my opinion, we definitely have a great police department.
Okay, that's very useful. Does anyone else, any of the WIP staff or the folks who are here from the task force, have additional questions for any of our participants today? I'm not necessarily hearing anything. Does anyone else have anything to ask?
I'll have something. I don't know if it's so much of an ask. This is Eric Giordano, by the way. Hi, folks. Thank you so much for being here. I'm kind of curious. Do you think there's a way that we could encourage and increase participation in people sharing their views? And I realize that not everybody wants to, do it in a public way. So I really admire your courage for doing it. We were joking about how would any of us be willing to do that if, and so really shout out and respect for that. But there are other ways to participate too. So we're curious, are you aware of those other ways? And do you think other people around you are aware of ways that they can participate?
I'm going to call on you folks. Paula, do you have any thoughts in response to Eric's question?
As far as publicly sharing our opinions?
No,
Yeah.
encouraging other people to participate in this
Oh.
kind of public listening session,
Sure.
like you're doing today.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm not sure how this was all advertised. I think I found it through, like I said, an email, through the WIPS emails. And can there be emails that can be sent out to parents through the schools, perhaps, would be an idea. More knowledge of these forms taking place.
Yeah, that makes sense, Paula. Sorry, did you have something more that you wanted
I
to
was
say?
I'm really not sure what audience you targeted or how it was spread about our community. And then when I think of, again, going back to my work role, I really feel that parent engagement is important, and maybe that's just another way to get that information out, is to have the school district send it out to the parents through email, or flyers with inside the schools.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In theory, that did happen. I sent a blurb to the school district. I'm not quite sure if it went out though, since I'm not on their newsletter list. Doug, how did you hear about this?
I actually heard about it from Pat Peckham. So he sent out a little reminder of this, and I typically try to watch for the WIPS events, and I do join in on occasion, but working from home, a lot of things are different than what they used to be. But I would say the school angle is definitely a good point. I think some of our best police work is done at the schools with our school resource officers, breaking down some of the barriers and hopefully presenting our best foot to the youth that we have. And maybe some of them would have more input than some old guys like me.
Thanks.
Or would be interested if maybe specifically invited, with that kind of an interest of youth and police force.
So Chandra, do you want to talk about this? Do you have thoughts for how we could encourage more robust participation in this kind of public dialogue around policing? Oh, sorry, Eric.
No, I should mention that I didn't just mean like in this Zoom public format, but also there are other ways to participate too, right? You can do online, you can do voicemail, just so encouraging any form of participation. So it doesn't have to be limited to this format. Anyway, sorry.
And I also wonder if we'd want to target the youth population for their feedback within the schools, not just the parents.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's very important. Chandra, do you have ideas?
Well, I think some of the ideas in place, the social media platform. I know Wausau Police Department is on social media and, does a fairly good job of letting the community know, information, concerns that people have about law enforcement and the police. And, I agree with everyone else. I think the schools are a good access point as well. I received the invite from the homeless liaison officer, and we work a lot with him and trying to house some of the homeless population in the city, which is another issue that, people have voiced concern over.
Yeah. Do you have more that you'd like to say about that, Chandra? The homeless population specifically?
Well, I mean, I know there was some contention with the parking ramp and what went into effect that, they thought it was criminalizing homelessness. No, they weren't doing that. They were coming up with ways to again, be proactive in how to solve this problem. And, the double side is they're congregating out at the gazebo, which is a public space, a park where, people would want to bring their families, and, when it's littered with things and there's illegal behaviors or inappropriate behaviors going on, you're not going to want to congregate down there. So I think this was a really good idea to come up with a plan. Again, being proactive rather than shaming or pointing a finger. Let's see how we can help as a community, and how can we shed light and educate the community while we're still helping individuals.
So do you see education and educational mission as an important element of law enforcement, sort of, the scope of law enforcement in this community? In other words, is education the job of law enforcement, or should it be the job of somebody like the mayor's office?
Well, I think it's a joint effort. I mean, we all learn something every day. We don't stick to our roles, and every day is different. And, I can't imagine for law enforcement that every day is different, and it's not going to be the same as the day before. And they run into a lot of situations that, aren't typical, and having to think fast and use their resources.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to share about anything you've just heard here, or any of the 6 questions we initially posted? I'm not hearing any
Ruth?
eager takers. Yes?
Ruth, I just like to interject that this is
Sure.
the first step of a multi-step process to try to engage the community. What we were, as a task force, hoping to do with this is to see what the comments were, and then take that back to the task force, but then develop a community survey to find not only where we are today as a community in terms of understanding and perspectives of policing, but to use it as a benchmark or a dashboard to evaluate future success. So we'll be doing a survey of the community, and then we'll be putting together focus groups to get into a little bit more detailed discussion. All of that information will be used by the task force to then develop a series of recommendations, which will, at the end of that process, go out to public hearings again, and looking for input on those recommendations. So there'll be additional opportunities to participate in the future. We appreciate your being here today. But one of the issues I think, Chandra, you had raised was that issue of homelessness. And one of the things we'll be looking at is the whole issue of social needs, homelessness, mental health, and trauma, and how they impact the community, and law enforcement's role in that, and whether or not there are other partners that we need to leverage to address some of those issues. So if you have thoughts on those issues, they would be welcome as well.
Yeah, and I agree. We see those partnerships happening right now with a lot of the substance abuse and mental health, and leaning on those agencies such as the CART team, not to be repetitive, but addressing people that are in mental health crisis, rather than arrest them and get charged with disorderly conduct. There's other ways to diffuse, and the training is huge. I mean, just being able to embrace different ways of doing things, and relying on our mental health system, and with those that are available to come out with the CART team, and to help not only diffuse situations and get individuals help, but also to lend that training piece to the officers. It's huge.
Thanks for that, Chandra. That's useful. So you would say that training piece is a very urgent priority?
Correct. I mean, the training piece and the partnerships. Yep.
Okay. All right. Good. That's helpful. I don't want to cut anybody off, but does anyone else have anything to add? I will remind everyone. Oh, sorry. I guess I'm hearing my own echo. I'm going to remind everybody that there are multiple ways for you to add additional comments to this process. The online, the URL that was posted in the chat can take you to those various ways of adding to your comments. If you forget something, if you've forgotten something and you remember in a couple of hours, please feel free to leave us a message or put an online comment into the mix, because thank you. We just posted the URL to that system again. So thanks to everybody for joining us today. And unless anyone else has anything they'd like to add, I'm going to conclude this session. Is everybody good? All right.
Oh, I don't know if this is relevant. Can I ask a quick question?
Absolutely, Doug. Yes.
One of the things that I've missed since March, we haven't had any neighborhood meetings, and there was always a police officer piece to that. And I think most of the neighborhood meetings did that with around the city. And I don't know if any have continued on with that. I mean, that's just another great few minutes of interaction with citizens that the police have done. And it would be nice to pick some of that back up as able within COVID starts to hopefully go away.
Sure. So that you're sounding like that's a current strength, but also an urgent priority once COVID, the pandemic, is sort of cooled down to reinitiate that.
Yes. I think it was really positive, and I didn't think about it until we were sitting here that we haven't had those interactions now going on a year, and there are people out there. At least the meetings I used to go to, some of the people were regulars, and they really look forward to that interaction, and it's a feel good about the community. Be great to be able to get back to some of that again.
Yeah. Well, I'm certainly hearing everybody sort of talk about how important it is that law enforcement is out in the community, being present and interacting with folks in compassionate ways as problem solvers, not just punishers. I mean, I think that's what I'm hearing from everybody. So hope I'm not putting words in anybody's mouth. But does anyone else have anything they'd like to add?
One quick thing, just kind of piggybacking off of what Doug said, I too think that was a huge asset, the meetings that were taking place. And of course, we understand why they're not temporarily. But just thinking, potentially maybe as they were doing those meetings, maybe they could incorporate one that was specifically targeted for youth. I mean, I know we have the liaison officers in the school, but I'm just wondering if, like a weekly, I'm sorry, not weekly, I think they were happening monthly. If they could do one that's just, targeted for youth to be able to voice themselves outside of the typical school setting. And I know that our police department is incredibly busy with many things. It's just a thought.
Sure. Do you have ideas for how police law enforcement could access youth outside of the school setting? So what are some ways that they could, gain access to that kind of social setting?
Yeah, I think we would have to start within the schools, with the liaison officers, because they've already have these established relationships with a lot of students, and then kind of generate it based off that, like with word of mouth in the schools, or, for example, like Officer Stetzer at Wausau East, maybe putting up flyers in the school and saying, hey, guess what? Starting next month, we're going to have a meeting that's just for kids to be able to come and talk about things that are concerning to them, and putting up flyers, sending out emails, or, social media platform, get the information to them as well.
Sure. Do you envision those meetings happening in the physical school, or do you envision them happening in some public space that's not the school? And if it's the second, like where, like a library or something like that?
Well, definitely the school would be an easy resource because they, go there. But I wonder if it might be a little more interesting to kids to go somewhere other than school. And obviously in the winter months we're limited, but maybe in the summer months to maybe have host one in a park. I think I can't think of the name of it, but there's something that happens in the summer on the 400 block with the police department being present for kids. Does anybody know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, there's a community appreciation day type event. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm kind of envisioning something like that, but but not on a large scale, more so where it's, you know, about the kids. So they can say, you know, this is what we'd like to see, or this is what we're struggling with, or, and again, it's just a thought.
I agree, Paula, that, you know, we definitely need the voice of young people as well, right? That's absolutely right. So your suggestions for how that could be accomplished are actually really useful. So thank you for sharing those. Does anyone else have any other comments, suggestions, remarks? Okay. So once again, I'm going to remind you, if you think of anything else that you want to add to this conversation after we all hang up, you can go to the WIP's website and select one of the other ways to join in the conversation. Otherwise, thanks everybody so much for participating today. Your perspectives are incredibly valuable to us, and we will very definitely be taking them into consideration as we move to next steps. So thanks everyone. I'm going to
Thank you so much.
Did Patrick have a concluding remark? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interject. Or not.
I have a concluding remark. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yay. Okay. We planned to have a conclusion here. My name is Pat Peckham, and I'm a member of the Wausau Policing Task Force. Mayor Katie twisted my arm. On behalf of the task force, I would like to thank you for your interest and participation in today's listening session. The task force appreciates receiving your comments and will be considering them as we work to develop recommendations to the public, police department, and the city council on how best to protect human health, safety, and general welfare of Wausau residents and visitors who come into contact with the law enforcement system. This is the start of the public engagement process, and there will be additional opportunities for you and others to weigh in on the future, including a public meeting on our recommendations. Please encourage others to weigh in at the listening sessions, leaving a voicemail, going to the online survey, or submitting comments via email or in writing. You can find more information at www.wipps.org/WPD, which is also posted in the chat section of our Zoom today. Thank you and good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day, everybody.